of oxidization on your metal, so you don't have to pickle it straight up. But what we will do is
we'll move on to the next spot.
Flux the back of this. Just enough to ensure that it runs. I've got a little Sharpie mark right there just to show me where I need to line it up with. And again, I don't want bucket loads of flux because I don't really want my solder when it melts to go sliding around all over the place. I want it to stay pretty well contained, and the best way to do that is to make sure that I'm not over fluxing. Okay, let's get that on there and lined up to that nice little Sharpie mark. I want to make sure I've got a good connection point, so I'm going to give that a little bit of a squish, and then I'm going to heat it up again and see if we can get that to sweat down nicely. Let's get that whole thing nice and warm. Avoiding that bezel cup though if you can. Really just want to get the copper plate nice and warm. And give it a little bit of a push down. That did the trick. All right. I'm going to duck that into the quench bowl and then plonk it into the pickle. And we will be back as soon as it has cleaned up. So we're out of the pickle. Let's turn that light down a little bit. And we've got just a little edge here to clean up. So I'm going to grab my file and just go over that edge there so that it's parallel to the wire. Now your metal is going to be really soft since you've just soldered, so be aware of that when you're shaping. Even when you're using slightly thicker metal, you're going to have a bit more give than what you're expecting. So take that into account when you're doing your shaping so you don't end up having to reshape the whole thing because you've been a bit enthusiastic. All right, buffing pad just to go over those edges and make sure there's no burrs. Noisy out there today. Okay, I am going to whiz over the back there with my Fordham and get rid of that very tiny sharp edge that we were talking about earlier on today. So for that, I'll just use a 600 sandpaper roll. That'll do the trick. These things are fantastic. I use them for just about everything. It's just enough to take off that lip. Doesn't have to be completely flush, but what it does have to do is be free of snags. Even if you can't see it, that's either going to be lying on your skin or lying on your clothes. And you do not want to have to put up with that. Alright, give it a quick pre-polished, and then what I'm going to do is pop it in the pickle. I've decided I'm going to patina this. So I'm going to stick it in some liquid of sulfur, and that will pick up on the pattern that was roll printed into this, which will look really nice. And once it's been patinaed, I will set the stone, and we will whip up the bale and we'll be done. Okie dokie. Let's slip that puppy back into place. There we go. A little bit of an adjust. Okay. All right, let's go give it a quick patina. And bring up that pattern, and then we'll set the stone, make the bail, and we're done. Now that that is patinaed, let's get that light off so you can see. Picks that pattern up a lot better. Let's see if we can find a sweet spot where you can see. All right, that'll do. We are going to plonk that stone in now and get that set down. It's a really soft little bezel. You're only going to need a prong pusher. We'll pop that little citrine in, make sure that it's seated down. If you can't see it seating 100% perfectly, give it a little gentle tap with your rawhide mallet, depending on the stone. If you've got something really soft, like a turquoise or howlite or something like that, do be careful tapping it in. But with something like a citrine or any of the quartzes or agate families, things like that, they're pretty tough. We're going to take a little bit of a slapping. Okay. Now, if you haven't done this before, then just make sure you think of it as a clock face. We've got 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and 9 o'clock. So we're going to do it in opposition. If we push in at 12, the next time we push in, it'll be 6. Then it'll be 3, then it'll be 9, then 2, 7, 5, 10. You get the idea. So what we're going to do is anchor those 4 points and then the opposite 4 points first, and then we'll just work our way around until that bezel is curved over and nice and flush against the stone. I've got it in my ring clamp at the moment, which gives it just a little bit of extra support. And I'm just going to take my time and work my way steadily around the bezel and make sure that I've got all of those cardinal points in and then all of the rest of the bezel down. Most importantly, I want all of those edges rolled up until they meet the stone. If, again, you don't do this very often, instead of rolling the bezel pusher up to meet the stone, I want you to hold the bezel pusher in place and roll your stone up to meet your bezel pusher. And that way, you won't skid out and scratch your stone if you haven't quite developed that set of muscle memory. Either way that works for you. If you've been doing this for a while, then you can do it whichever way your muscle structure prefers you to do it. It's funny how our ergonomics can make things so incredibly different from person to person. There's no one right way to do this. It's whatever way works. Almost down. I'm just going to give it a bit of a scooch and swap to my agate burnisher. Rub that down. The one good thing about these little tiny bezel cats is they're thin, so they push down really easily. Of course, the flip side of that is if you put a bit too much force on it, it'll just push in from one side and scooch out the other. No tapping, no rattling. Okay, that is down. So there is our basic pendant that's sitting down there ready to hang from our bezel, for our bail. Okay, speaking of bails, there is a little piece that I drew out earlier. Now you can see it's got a little fan shape in it, and that's what I'm going to use for my bail. So I'm going to grab my saw, whack a bit of lubricant on there, and cut around that little bail. Again, take your time. A nice clean edge means a lot less filing for you afterwards. Little sticky again, so I'm going to add a little bit more lube and get rid of that little bit there. Oh, off you go. No, I shan't. Yes, you will. All right, round the corner we go. It's tempting to do short strokes, but all you're going to do is dull a tiny portion of your blade. So use the whole length of your blade. Little short strokes when you go around a corner are fine, but when you're doing straight lines or gentle curves, use your whole blade. It's going to give you a nice clean cut. There we go. Nice little gentle fan. I'm going to grab my 220 sandpaper roll. There aren't many nicks or cut-ins there or stuff-ups on the line, so I'm just going to get rid of the burrs. And I can do that by putting my sandpaper roll on a 45-degree angle on the edge. And just going over those edges front and back, because again, we don't want any sharp edges on either side. It doesn't really matter that nobody can see it. It's going to be lying on your skin or against your clothes. And you'll know it's there because you'll feel it. Okay, a little bit of a buff. Now what this shape has given me is a lovely top bail shape and a nice long tail that I can curl and wrap under to make the attachment for that. What I'm going to do now is cut a half circle, a piece of 16 gauge wire, solder it on the back, and that will become my my top bail. So I'm going to stick that over there, ready to go. I'm going to grab a little piece of copper wire, which I know I've got floating around here somewhere. That'll do. Here's one I prepared earlier. Get some stepped around those pliers. That's 1, 2, third one down. Maybe the fourth one down. Looks about right. So I am going to roll myself a bit of a circle. I'm going to take my wire cutters and I'm going to trim right about there. Then I'm going to trim at the other side. So I've got a nice little half circle going on there. What I am going to do to make my life easier is I'm going to plonk it in my miter vise and I'm going to file those top edges until they're 100% flat. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I'm going to just stand it up and solder it on. And it's a heck of a lot easier to do that if the edges are flat and it can stand up by itself. That's if I can get it in here. Alrighty. Where'd he go? Nope, there it is. Let's try that again. Close that up just a little bit. There we go. Okay. Tweezers. Because I can't get my fat fingers in there. Come back. Got it. All right, I just want to get those edges just above the miter vise, just a titch. If you can feel that, you're good to go. All right, screw that down nice and firmly. Take your flat file and file gently over the top. Again, you know, this is just copper wire. It doesn't require a lot of grunt or strength. just enough to clean it up and make it nice and flat and smooth. Okay, can't feel that now, which means it's nice and flat. Let's get that out. That was a lot easier to take out than it was putting it in. And let's see how that balances on the back. Look at that. Sits up all by itself, nice and easy, which is exactly what we want because it makes my life a lot easier. All right, flux. Turn that light up so you can see what I'm doing again. And I'm going to put a little bit of flux on the back. It doesn't have to be a lot, just enough to cover the bit that we're going to do. I have found that the copper that we've been getting here in Australia, just the last 2 or 3 batches, oxidizes like crazy, and you get very little time before it goes pitch black and then your solder won't flow. So I tend to be using just a little bit more flux at the moment. I have no idea what's going on with it, but everyone seems to be finding the same issue. So I'm using a little bit more flux than I usually do, and that will hopefully slow down that oxidization so that I can get the solder flowing before it gums up on me. Oops. All right, 1 pallion right there next to the base of that leg. And I'm going to take another tiny little pallion. I'm using medium solder at the moment, guys. This one doesn't have any other solder seams that needs to be done, so I could have used easy. But again, it's something that's going to be taking the weight of the pendant, not that that's a lot. But I prefer something a little bit stronger, so medium it is. Okay, micro torch, because we don't need a lot of heat. And all I'm going to do is heat it from the opposite side of the pallions until the solder runs through. So I'm going to stay back, let that referred heat dry off my flux because I don't want my pallions bouncing around. As soon as it's dried up, I can sneak up on it and get that heat moving at the base. There we go. Pull it up the wire a little bit just to give it a wee bit extra strength. And just see what I mean? It's pitch black. It takes a couple of seconds and the whole thing goes black. And funnily enough, it does it over and over and over again instead of just 1 or 2 times and then it stops. Weird. Weird, I tell you. All right, that's gone into the pickle. And as soon as that's clear in pickle, I will show you how to roll that up and stick it onto your pendant. All right, we're out of the pickle. And let's plonk that back where it belongs. We have our little bail on the back. We've patinaed it just to make sure that it matches the rest. If you have an agate burnisher, feel free to give it a bit of a scooch over because that really brings up the shine. And you can use your polishing stuff and whatnot else, but this way I find just shines up the high areas, which is what I want. Leaves the rest of it dull and dark, which gives it a really nice contrast. Wait. Also helps me chuck it around. Okay, I'm going to use my stepped round nose pliers, and I'm going to use the second from the smallest one. Yeah, that'll do. And I'm going to, you know what, I'm going to use the third from the smallest one. I'm going to roll that up. Just a little bit further until it's almost touching the back there. Can you see that? Easier if I balance it against my hand. So now you can see where it's rolled up. That is going to slip right through there. And I'm going to use those stepped round nose pliers to continue that roll until I get it to the height that I want it, which is just a little bit shorter than what I had it rolled previously. And that, my darlings, is that. I will turn this around so that you can see what it looks like hanging up. And we are done. Let's swap cameras. Hey. Okay, so there's the pendant. Whoa, trying to get it to balance. There we go. That's better. So you can choose to have that bail on there or not. Entirely up to you. You can have it on sometimes, off the other times. It's not soldered down on the tail, so you can change it around. But it's a simple inside out, back to front pendant. Okay, thank you so much for joining me today on Q Talk Live. I hope Q had a great day off, and hopefully I will see you. Actually, I will see some of you again because I'm super excited. In October, we have the Virtually Ever Crafting convention, I suppose you want to call it, coming up, and I'm going to be teaching some classes there. So I suggest you pop online, have a look. There are teachers from all over the world, and there are some phenomenal classes, not to mention the first day of all the Virtually Ever Crafting shorts, where you can just go hog wild and collect as much knowledge as you want. So check it out, register online, and Q will be back to see you again on Wednesday with another fun class. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been a hoot. I will see you again sometime soon, I'm sure. And in the meantime, stay cool. I'm going to try and stay warm over here with my heater blasting.